Hello and welcome. Today we're diving into a really critical topic in pediatric care, infectious disorders. But we're not just going to list off diseases and symptoms. Nah, the goal here is to really build that clinical mindset, to help you connect what you're seeing at the bedside directly to the interventions that can literally save a child's life. Let's just start with this one powerful truth, because it really sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about. In kids, things can go from okay to catastrophic fast. I mean, shockingly fast. And that's exactly why your assessment skills aren't just a nice to have, they are everything. So, here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll dig into why kids are so uniquely vulnerable. Then we'll nail down the universal assessment priorities you need for any sick child. After that, we'll put a spotlight on 3 key diseases. And we'll wrap it all up by talking about the warning signs we need to teach parents, and of course, the best defense of all, prevention. Okay, so first things first, why this special focus on kids? I mean, why are they so different? It really all comes down to their unique physiology. A child's immune system is, it's still learning. It hasn't built up the library of defenses that an adult has. Then you throw them into daycare or school, which are basically little petri dishes, and combine that with, let's be honest, not so great hand-washing habits, and it's a perfect storm. But you know what the real kicker is? It's that last point. Their tiny body reserves. A fever that might just be an annoyance for you or B can cause a small child to become dangerously dehydrated in no time at all. So, knowing how vulnerable they are, how do we approach a child when we even suspect an infection? Well, it starts with a universal toolkit, a set of priorities that you apply every single time, no exceptions. It always comes back to the ABCs: airway, breathing, circulation. Before you worry about the rash, before you check the temperature, you have to be sure these 3 things are solid. Is their airway open? Are they breathing effectively? Is blood getting where it needs to go? This is the absolute non-negotiable foundation of your assessment. So once you've secured the ABCs, you start hunting for clues. But here's the tricky part. With the littlest patients, the first signs of a really serious infection can be incredibly subtle. So what's that one sign you absolutely cannot afford to miss? This is it, right here. For an infant, a raging infection might not show up as a screaming high fever. It might just be they're not eating well, or their temperature is a little off, maybe a little too low or a little too high. These tiny, seemingly minor changes might be the only alarm bells you get that something is going very, very wrong. Okay, now that we've got our foundation, let's apply this way of thinking to 3 specific, high-stakes infectious diseases. First up, measles, also known as rubeola. The 2 words you need to lock onto here are highly contagious and airborne. This thing just hangs in the air, which makes it incredibly easy to spread and means you have to take very specific precautions right away. This is where we really connect the dots. When you see those classic Koplik spots, the little white spots inside the mouth, you're literally seeing the virus replicating. That's not just a sign, it's a screaming signal to get that child into airborne isolation immediately. Then you've got the 3 C's: cough, coryza, and conjunctivitis. Why? Because the virus loves to attack those areas. So your job becomes watching them like a hawk for pneumonia and the high fever. That's just the body's all-out war against the virus, and your priority is to manage it and push fluids like crazy. But let's be really, really clear. The most important fact about measles is this: it is preventable. Totally. The MMR vaccine is one of the greatest public health tools we have, period. All right, next up, dengue fever. Now we're shifting gears. The transmission isn't through the air, it's from a mosquito bite. This changes how we think about prevention, but it definitely doesn't change how serious this illness can be. With dengue, it's all about watching for a scary progression. So you see petechia, or bleeding gums? That's because the virus is attacking their platelets and making their blood vessels leaky. Your first move is to watch their labs and look for any new bleeding. Then comes abdominal pain and vomiting. Uh-oh. Those are huge warning signs that fluid might be leaking out of their vessels, which is the first step towards shock. But here is the most critical, most counterintuitive sign of all. The fever starts to drop, but the child looks worse. That's the alarm bell for shock. The body is giving up. I'm going to say that again because it is so incredibly important. A fever that's going down should feel like good news, but in dengue, it can be the most dangerous sign of all. When you see a falling fever but a worsening kid, you have to think shock. And finally, let's talk about meningitis. This is an infection of the meninges, those protective layers wrapped around the brain and spinal cord. And it's that location that makes this a full-blown medical emergency. Okay, so with meningitis, almost every single sign you see is caused by one thing: increased intracranial pressure, or ICP. That pressure is building up inside the skull. In a baby, that pressure makes their soft spot bulge and causes that unmistakable high-pitched neurologic cry. Your job? Keep a close eye on their neurostatus and keep the room quiet and calm. In an older kid, that same pressure irritates the meninges, which gives you the classic stiff neck and sensitivity to light. Your priority is to get them on droplet precautions and be ready for seizures. And if you even suspect it's bacterial, you hang those IV antibiotics immediately. You do not wait. And let's not mince words here. Meningitis is a medical emergency. Time is brain. A fast, aggressive response is the only shot we have at preventing really devastating outcomes like deafness or permanent brain damage. Now, our assessment in the hospital is absolutely vital. But you know what? The first line of defense often starts way before they get to us. It starts at home with the parents. So how do we do it? How do we turn anxious parents into our best first alert system? We do it by teaching them clearly, simply, and effectively. We make them our partners. And this isn't some huge, complicated textbook chapter we're giving them. These are clear, actionable red flags. We teach them that if their child is struggling to breathe, if they refuse to drink anything, if they stop making wet diapers, or if they just become super sleepy and hard to wake up, that is the time to get help, right now. And that brings us to our last section, and honestly, the most important one. Because the absolute best way to manage any of these awful diseases is to stop them from ever happening at all. And the single most powerful weapon we have in this fight is immunization. I mean, look at this list. Routine vaccinations have saved countless lives from diseases that used to be a terrifying part of childhood. Our role in educating families about just how safe and important these vaccines are, that's one of the most impactful things we do. So let's end on this thought. Your assessment is so much more than a checklist. It's not just about ticking boxes. It's about understanding the why behind every little thing you see. It's about spotting those subtle signs that things are heading in the wrong direction. It is a dynamic thinking process. And for a sick child, it is their absolute first and best line of defense. Thanks so much for joining me.